The race for Brooklyn District Attorney is getting lots of attention. One of the two persons challenging DA Charles Hines will be joining me in less than a minute. Later, I'll be chatting with the mother of a young man who was murdered, and in his memory, a street in Brooklyn was just named. Sherry Logan will be chatting with another of Brooklyn's young academic achievers. Well, will Brooklyn be getting a new district attorney this year? Well, Ken Thompson, welcome to Brooklyn 45. I guess you hope so.
Yes, indeed, and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. How's the campaign going?
The campaign is going great. We're going throughout Brooklyn, meeting voters, describing what we want to do with the Brooklyn DA's office. It is clearly time for a new DA here in Brooklyn.
Well, Mr. Hines has been DA for a long time. 5 terms, I believe it is?
It's actually 6 terms, and he's seeking a 7th.
Seeking a 7th term. What has the response been to your candidacy?
The response has been overwhelmingly positive. People in Brooklyn realize that we need a DA who believes in fairness, equality, and justice, because the ultimate role of a DA is to do justice, and that's not what's happening with the current Brooklyn DA. Day after day, we're hearing all of these news reports of people who have been wrongfully convicted for crimes that they did not commit. We are hearing so many news articles about stop and frisk happening here in Brooklyn, and the DA has remained completely silent on that issue. The people of Brooklyn want a leader, not just a gatekeeper of the criminal justice system. And DA Hines has been in office for 24 years, and that is long enough. And he has said that he wants to serve until he's in his 90s, so he can set the record of being the longest serving DA in the history of the city. The people of Brooklyn deserve better than that. We need a DA who's going to get up every morning and want to make sure that our children, our families, our streets are safe. And a DA that's going to treat everyone fairly and equally, not someone who's just trying to set a Guinness Book of World Record. It's time for a new DA.
What do people in Brooklyn know about you? Now, of course, we all hear your name associated with Admiral Louima, but what do people know about you?
What people know about me is that I'm a fighter for justice. But what they don't know, what they may not know, is that I started out life in New York City public housing. I was raised by a single mother who struggled to take care of 3 young children. But my mother fought to give me and my brother and sister a better life. And in order to do that, she became a New York City police officer while we were still living in public housing. Back in 1973, became one of the first women, black or white, to go on patrol in the history of the city. And my mother put on her uniform every day for 21 years, knowing that she may be discriminated against or may not make it back home to her children. She gave me an enormous example of courage and sacrifice. And she put something to me as a little boy to stand up and fight for people who have been wrong or subjected to injustices. And because of her, I was able to go through the New York City public school system, graduated John Jay College with honors, attended NYU Law School, worked in President Clinton's Treasury Department in Washington, D.C., and served as a federal prosecutor here in Brooklyn, where I did a lot of cases. I prosecuted murderers, bank robbers, violent gangs, and did the Admiral Louima trial that you referred to.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about stop and frisk. That's high on many people's agenda, high on many people's radar, and of concern to so many.
Yes, and it should be. Stop and frisk is a tactic that is being abused here in the city. It is a tactic that is being used excessively, and we know that based on the statistics. I mean, how is it possible that hundreds of thousands of young black men and Latino men are being stopped and frisked and not being found with anything on them? I mean, one newspaper analyzed 4 years of stop and frisk numbers and determined that on an 8-block stretch in Brownsville, there were over 50,000 stops and frisk and only 25 guns recovered. I have been speaking to people as I go throughout Brooklyn. Many are victims of stop and frisk. and they feel humiliated, they feel disrespected. And I think law enforcement has an obligation to work with the community. We all want guns off the street, but we have to do it in a way in which we protect the civil rights of the people in the community. And so I think that stop and frisk, if it's done the right way, based on reasonable suspicion, can help save lives. But clearly, the way many of these stop and frisks are occurring, it's not being done the right way.
Do you have a plan of action to change how it's being conducted right
Yes,
now?
I do. One of the things I think we need to do is the DA works daily with the police, and the DA must work with the new police commissioner who's going to come in January and make sure that the police are adequately trained to know what constitutes reasonable suspicion. There was a recent trial, a class action lawsuit in Manhattan Federal Court on the issue of stop and frisk in the Floyd case. And the judge presiding over that trial, Judge Shira Schindler, said that the NYPD lacks so much training that officers are stopping people first and then determining if there's reasonable suspicion. That's not what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court said that an officer must first have reasonable suspicion to stop someone. Reasonable suspicion, essentially, that someone is committing a crime or about to commit a crime. And then in order for them to search that person, they must have reasonable and articulable suspicion, not a hunch. They must see a bulge or the handle of a gun, something to cause the officer to believe that the person is armed and dangerous. And so I think that the police we have to work with the police to make sure that all the officers know what constitutes reasonable suspicion. But I also think the DA has an obligation to look at these cases. We can no longer allow the DA, like Charles Hines, to sit 19 stories above the ground and apparently just shrug his shoulders at tens of thousands of young men of color who are being stopped and frisked and brought into the system, some of them unjustly. And so I want to do something about that. I want to make sure that my ADAs know what constitutes reasonable suspicion, because I want the community to uphold the law, but I'm going to make sure that the police uphold the law too. And so I think that as DA, I will be a leader. And the last thing I would say is, I will go into the community. I think it's important for the DA to show leadership on the issue of stop and frisk. All the young men that I've spoken to who've been stopped and frisked, they haven't been told their rights. They haven't spoken to the DA. They think that the police targets them. The police is there to protect them. And I had one woman, an African-American woman, 62 years old, come up to me and tell me that she was stopped and frisked. She went into a bodega in a neighborhood in Bedford-Stuyvesant in the middle of the day. And she was told by officers that that was a so-called known drug place. And they searched her. And there was nothing on her. And she felt humiliated to be stopped and frisked in her own neighborhood after she came out of the store. We've got to do better than that. The community and the police must work together. And that's what I intend to do. I intend to bring them together as the new Brooklyn DA.
Do you think it's necessary to change the culture of the NYPD? Many people say that they use negative stereotypes when they're addressing people of certain ethnic persuasions, particularly African Americans.
Well, let me say this. I think that the police have the hardest job on earth. They put their lives on the line. We know about police officers who have died in the line of duty to protect us. Rodney Andrews, James Nimmerin, Peter Fagorski. So I support the police. My mother was a police officer for 21 years. But at the same time, I also believe that we must make sure that everyone in the community is treated with dignity and respect. And as you know, one police officer secretly recorded his supervisor up in the Bronx, telling him to go out and stop black males. We can't have that. That's not right. We need to stop people who are criminals, people who are committing acts that give us reasonable suspicion. Walking down the streets of Brownsville or East New York as a young black man does not constitute reasonable suspicion. And we need to be honest about that. There's a way to keep us safe and also protect our civil rights.
The Daily News referred to you as an upstart district attorney candidate. How did you feel about that?
Well, I don't recall reading that, but I would say that I am someone who feels passionately about justice and about fundamental fairness. And I believe that we have a DA now who's lost control of his office. I mean, the fact that he now has to investigate 50 homicide cases to make sure that innocent people weren't convicted in those cases is deeply troubling. And so I believe that the people of Brooklyn need to have confidence in the integrity of the criminal justice system. And that's what I intend to do as Brooklyn DA. I mean, the scandal after scandal are unfolding almost on a daily basis with this current DA. And so I think the people of Brooklyn deserve to have the finest district attorney's office, not just in New York City, but in the country. And that's what I intend to bring them.
What endorsements do you have? I know Eric Adams didn't endorse you. Did you feel a bit snubbed by that?
Well, let me just say this. I have been endorsed by Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, by Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. I've been endorsed by the Bay Ridge Democrats, by the Muslim Democrats of New York City, by Lambda. I am proud of the endorsements I have. But ultimately, I want the endorsements of the people of Brooklyn on September 10th when they go to the polls. Because I have stood up for Abner Louima. I have stood up to get justice for Emmett Till. I have stood up for the hotel housekeeper in the case involving Dominic Strauss-Kahn, Nafissatou Diallo, and I will stand up for all the people of Brooklyn as the new Brooklyn DA.
One last word?
Yes. I would say this. We are at a very important crossroads here in Brooklyn. We need to change the direction of the Brooklyn DA's office. We cannot sit by and let innocent people get convicted for crimes that they did not commit. We cannot sit by and let tens of thousands of young men of color be stopped and frisked and brought into the system without reasonable suspicion. We cannot sit by and let innocent people be taken from their homes or off the street to undisclosed hotels and held against their will in order to force them to testify, as former Brooklyn DA employees have testified to under oath. This is what's been happening under the current DA. And so we have a great opportunity here to bring fundamental fairness, justice, and equality. And that's what I intend to do. Every community will be treated equally, no matter where you live, no matter how much money you have, no matter where you come from. I believe that there should be one standard of justice in Brooklyn that we all must adhere to, and I will protect all the children of Brooklyn.
Ken Thompson, candidate for Brooklyn District Attorney. Thank you for coming down to Brooklyn 45.
Thank you for having me.
And September is just around the corner.
September 10th.
Yes, indeed. Now to Sherry Logan, who answers the question, is there a connection between dementia and loneliness?
Do you often feel lonely? Often? If you do, maybe it's time for you to do something about your social life. According to a new study, people who feel lonely are much more likely to develop dementia in their old age than those who do not. Researchers suggest that having a supportive social network is linked with positive health outcomes, from psychological health to physical health. Lacking such a supportive social network can be harmful. In fact, studies find that loneliness itself can kill by raising your blood pressure and increasing your risk for heart disease and stroke. If you want more information about dementia and how to avoid it, contact me on Facebook or on Twitter. I'm Sherry Logan. Back to you, Sam.
Brooklyn 45 with Professor Samte.
Stand on the corner of East 40th Street and Avenue D. Look up at the signpost, and what do you see? You will see the Christopher Rose Way. My guest is well known to Brooklyn 45 viewers, Sharon Rose, who is one of our producers, but she is here in a different role. What you don't know is that the street corner is named in honor of her son, Christopher. The story begins tragically. On July 5th, 2005, Christopher and his friends were on their way to Port Authority bus terminal when they were approached by a gang of teenagers. They demanded that he give him this iPod. When he refused, the gang attacked Rose. During the struggle, Rose was stabbed twice and died at the age of 15. Sharon, welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Thank you, Sam.
I know that this is pretty difficult for you, but let's talk about the street naming. You were able to go through these last how many years?
8 years. This July would make it exactly 8 years.
And without being bitter at all, you worked very hard to establish an organization. The organization was the Christopher Rose Empowerment, completed for me.
Yes, Christopher Rose Community Empowerment Campaign, and our goal is to empower young people to make positive choices. That way, we empower the communities to stay vibrant, safe, and healthy.
Why did you decide to not give up and to form an organization?
Well, you said I was bitter. Anyone who suffered a tragedy like our family has will experience some sort of bitterness at some level. Or why I didn't stay in bitterness was because I understand that there's a higher power, and I was infused with the drive and the motivation to do more for young people because of what happened to my son. And that's why the campaign was birthed. I didn't do it by myself. I'm one of the co-founders, but it was also an initiative of family, friends, and community members who felt the impact of Christopher's death and decided we should do something about it. And that's how the organization was started, the Christopher Rose Community Empowerment Campaign.
Talk a bit about that tragic moment, the tragedy, when you heard the news that your son had been stabbed to death.
Well, first of all, at first I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, and because I'm a Christian and I have a strong faith, I sort of kind of expected that it was just temporary or momentary. For the first several months, actually, I thought he would come back. I just thought maybe he would appear back. That's how traumatized I was, because no one was expecting anything of this magnitude or this depth to happen to him. He was a quiet kid. He was good, and I'm not saying that because I'm his parent, but because of who he was. Anyone who knows him, people from my job, my workplace, his friends from Pennsylvania, everyone, they can attest to the type of character he was. He spoke very little and did much with the short time he was here. And, it just shocked me that something like that would happen to a young man who always did his best to steer himself away from trouble and to steer any of his friends also away from trouble. As a matter of fact, they called him the peacemaker, because he was the one always talking to his friends to stay out of fights and just to stay focused, to do whatever it was that was positive to keep on the right track.
Getting a street named in honor of someone is not easy. It requires the support of residents. Mm-hmm. Talk about the support that was necessary, because this wasn't your decision.
No, it wasn't. It was a decision of my council member, Councilman Williams, and his office. They approached me about the opportunity to do a street naming in the 45th district, which they have never done before. And of course, I was, pleased. I was excited about the opportunity, and when I mentioned it to other people, they jumped right on the bandwagon. And within a short space of time, we had over 700 signatures. With the support from the community, from friends, from community-based organizations, from colleagues, it was just amazing. And that's how we were able to accomplish this. And I'm so grateful to all the organizations that contributed.
I said it earlier. Where exactly is this street? The corner, the junction, where it is? Where exactly is it?
The exact corner for the co-naming will be East 40th Street and Avenue D. The corner, the north, actually, it's the southeast. Southwest? No, it's the southeast corner. No, I'm sorry, correction. The northeast corner of East 40th Street and Avenue D. That's right opposite the street corner where Christopher fell to his death. We actually wanted the northwest corner co-named, but there's no street pole at that corner to have erected the sign, so we chose the northeast corner.
The support you received from your neighbors for the street naming, talk a bit about that.
Well, when the councilman approached us and told us we had to get signatures, enough people in the community supporting the co-naming of the street, we approached, our neighbors and other community-based organizations. People that agreed to carry sheets to their neighbors to pass it around at block association meetings and to have friends and family sign. We got support from, organizations that we're affiliated with, such as Caribbean Women's Health Organization, Brooklyn Perinatal Network. Some of the churches got signatures for us from their congregation. Our neighbors, I didn't have to start. I went door to door myself and some of the other members, but the minute I started to explain why we needed it, people just said, yes, we'll sign. So I didn't have to do much coercing. The support was just absolutely amazing.
The organizations that you formed, we talked about one of them earlier. Tell me what this organization does.
Well, actually, it's one organization. It's the Christopher Rose Community Empowerment Campaign, but within the which we use the acronym CREC, CRCEC. But within that organization, we have a three-pronged approach to community empowerment, which is our HOPE program, supporting parents, parent support, and empowerment. And then we have PACE, which is Practical, Academic, and Cultural Enrichment Program, which is a youth development component for young people, for kids. And then we have the CAMERA, which is our main flagship initiative, which is really raising community awareness. It's called CAMERA for Community Action and Mobilization Effort to Raise Awareness. And we're trying to raise awareness of issues that affect youth, that affect community safety, that affect violence and street violence. And we know that's our goal, to mobilize the community, to really have them take an active participation, an active stance in their community to, usher our youth into adulthood.
In our community. Now, where is this community?
The community that I'm speaking of is East Flatbush. We do a lot of work as well because our office is right now, our main administrative offices are located in East New York. So we serve East New York, Brownsville, Canarsie, East Flatbush, Midwood Flatbush, Central Brooklyn, in other words. But our target areas is East Flatbush and East New York.
How do your family feel about the street naming? Your daughters, you have 3 daughters?
I have 3 daughters. And Christopher was my only son. He was the youngest child and my only son, as they say in the Caribbean. He was wash belly. but my 3 daughters are very supportive. They're all grown and they are, they have their own careers, and they are very supportive of the street co-naming, and so is everyone else. And I'm grateful for that. Our family is still unified and solidified about this process, and we're looking forward to it.
Sharon Rose, producer of Brooklyn 45, mother of Christopher Rose, and it's very difficult to figure out what to say to you at this time, except that the memorial for your son is really one that would be very pleasing to you and your family and to the community as well, because they all shared the grief about Christopher's loss. So congratulations on not just remaining at home and grieving, but on setting up these organizations in his memory.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this on the program, Sam. And I hope you'll be there at the street co-naming to share with us as well.
And of course I'll be there. And now we move on to Shari Logan, who will be talking to another young person.
I'm here with Alexia Johnson, this week's Young Academic Achiever. She graduated from James Madison High School and will be attending college in the fall. Alexia, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, I'm 18 years old, and I'm from Mill Basin, Canarsie area, and I'll be going to Quinnipiac University this August.
What will your major be?
Journalism, mainly media broadcasting.
What do you like about that field?
Being on TV?
Being on TV?
No, but specifically just informing others about news and awareing citizens in my community about what's going on, stuff like that.
Why do you think that is important for people like yourself, young women, and for persons of color to get into that field?
I think mainly persons of color and specifically women, whatever we do, whatever we put our minds to, we can achieve. But mainly for women, we've been making a stamp now in this world and in this field. I think it's important for us to continue to do that. And specifically me, a young black woman of color, coming up in this field, I think it's important for me to stay focused and, to be an inspiration to others. I think that's why it's important for others like myself of my color and young women to be in this field.
Well, let's backtrack just a little. While you were at James Madison High School, what were some of your favorite subjects there?
English,
that's obvious.
writing, history, and that's it.
Okay.
I don't like math.
Oh, okay. Yeah. People that tend to be in broadcast, those fields, they tend to shy away from math, not
Yes.
unless they're going to be a commentator on that subject. So while you were at James Madison, I know we were discussing before the segment that you were involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. What were some of the things that you were involved in while there?
School-wise, with athletics, I did track for a little bit, and I was on the flag squad for my marching band, but I was more active outside of my school, mainly in my community. And while interning for my council member, Jamani Williams' office, I was a part of a youth group organization that I founded and that I am president of, and it's called STAT, Students Taking Action Today. And we were mainly community activists doing stuff in the community for kids our age, a little older, and just informing others of issues that's affecting us and preparing us for our future and our future goals and career goals.
It's definitely important if you want to be a journalist to be connected to the community.
Yes.
For those students that may be listening to this, how would they be able to get involved in such a the organization that you were just speaking about?
Definitely staying in school and talking to their teachers about maybe have they heard of any thing they can join, anything outside of school, networking within the school, and mainly outside of the school, because you're not going to be in that school for all your life, but maybe going to local organizations, trying to just be involved and staying involved in anything they can do, yeah.
I know that there are also a lot of students that are listening that have different career goals. For someone that has always done well in school, what would you say to encourage those students to continue to do well, and why is it so important that they take their studies so importantly?
For me, it was mainly staying focused and being grounded, not really being into all the hype and all the distractions. Kind of just knowing I always knew what I wanted to do, always had goals for myself, and I stuck to those goals. So for the kids who might find it hard to kind of stay focused, mainly for one day, okay, write a list of what I want to accomplish for today, or what I think I might want to do when I get older, and kind of working towards that. Because I know for some children, they think, okay, I want to do this, but how do I go about it, or they might be scared. So just kind of thinking about what they want to do and kind of having goals or to-do lists about what they should do to get to that goal.
Well, thank you so much, Alexia.
Thank you.
Best of success in the future, and hope you do great at your school in the fall.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again for watching Brooklyn 45. If you have not visited our Facebook page as yet and liked us, please do so. Go to www.facebook.com/Brooklyn45.Sam Tate and be sure to leave a comment about tonight's program.